Okay, so specific concerns about the general economy. Obviously, the number one concern was the economic recession itself. And then a subsequent concern was the impact of taxes on the economy. And the overall cost of living was third on that list, with the rest of them basically statistically tying for last: cutbacks in government programs, falling home prices, affordability of housing. You know, we were a little surprised that the falling home prices did not register as a more significant issue. That's something that is hitting people directly in their own personal financial situation. And the foreclosure rate has been very high in Utah, one of the highest in the nation. And yet voters didn't seem all that concerned about falling home prices. There's a level of concern there, but it didn't rank as high as the other issues. Okay, because of the nature of this recession, and we've been hearing that nationally this is a consumer recession, and it's a recession that's prompted by too much debt, as well as systemic problems in the financial system, but a lot of it had to do with personal debt levels, personal spending. We've gotten in this country to a situation where consumption, the things that we buy, is 70% of the national economy, when it used to be more like 63% of the economy. And so clearly it seems like there was a consumption bubble that built up. So we asked a few questions about debt levels and about savings levels. And what we found on we've been hearing nationally that people are paying down debt as they're consuming less, and some of that is happening in Utah. When you add up the amount of people who have decreased their debts considerably or somewhat, you have about 38% that have done that, decreasing their debts. It's about the same as those whose debt level has stayed the same, while those whose debt levels have increased, only about 24% of the voters. So we have seen some movement. It's not a real strong trend, but it does seem that Utahns are paying down debt to some extent, similar to what we've been hearing about the national trend. We also asked how their level of personal savings has changed. And we find here the results are pretty evenly divided. About a third said that their savings have decreased either considerably or somewhat. Considering the amount of unemployment and reductions in personal income in the state, I think it's encouraging that only about a third of Utahns say that their savings have decreased. We see a third that say that it stayed the same, and a third that say that their level of savings has actually increased. And these questions, the savings and the debt questions, were about the past 2 years. We asked how their level of debt and savings had changed in the past 2 years. Number 2 on our list of top priorities was concern about government spending. And you can see that 52% of voters polled said that they were very concerned about government spending. Now, in the framing of these questions, we tried to keep them focused on Utah state level issues, but it is possible that as people were asked this question, the survey was about 12 minutes long, and people can get a little distracted, and it's possible that some of their concern about federal government spending carried over here. We're really not sure. The other thing we're not sure about is some people are concerned about spending because it's too high, in their opinion, and at a time when governments at all levels are cutting back, some people might be concerned about spending because of the cutbacks. And so it's not really clear exactly what this means, although when I show you a follow-up graph here, you'll see some more insight on spending. Okay, we asked this question in 2008 and in the current survey: how should spending change for these major services that the state provides? And the result is very similar to what it was in 2008. There's a very strong preference among voters that spending for K-12 education should increase. On a scale of 1 to 5, on this one, 5 meant definitely increase, 3 meant keep it the same, and 1 meant definitely decrease spending. And so we see a strong preference for public education, K-12 education, to see an increase in spending. And then the next 3 are virtually tied statistically: law enforcement, prisons, healthcare, colleges and universities, and higher education. And there's some preference there for increased spending as well. But when we ask the question, what about overall state spending, this is very similar to last time. The number is below 3, meaning that on average, Utahns want to see less state spending. Now, this is a little bit of a quandary, because in this state, which has 25% more children than the average state would have for this population, a lot of what we spend is on public education. And if we want to increase spending on public education and on higher education, it's virtually impossible to decrease overall state spending. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there. And so those of you who are running for office this year, that's something to be mindful of. To think about voters' concerns. When you get to specifics, there is a lot of sympathy for increasing spending, but then when you get to the overall budget, they want to see less. I don't think that's a surprise to those of us who watch politics, but it's something to be aware of. Okay, when we asked questions about K through 12 education, we saw in 2004 that almost 2/3 of Utahns said that their level of concern about public education was the highest level possible. And that fell in 2008 to less than a majority, and then has risen again now to 53% of Utahns give K through 12 education their highest rating of concern. It's possible that the cutbacks that were considered during this legislative session influenced voters' opinions on this, and their level of concern about education increased. It's quite possible that other things are going on. Our education system is going through a lot of strain in recent years, where in the 1990s student growth was just really non-existent, and this decade we've been seeing student growth each year that almost rivals what we had for the entire decade of the 90s. And so there is a lot of strain going on in the education system, and the concern seems to be rising. We asked specific questions about K through 12 education to understand what voters' most important concerns were about education. Same result as in 2008 with funding for public education ranking as the highest specific concern about education. When you look at the next 5 or so, perhaps 6, they are quite similar in rank as in 2008 with how well students are prepared for the future, meaning college and careers. The way it was asked was college and careers. It's hard to put that on the ground. Teacher quality is a concern. That concern has been in the top 3 or 4 each time we've done this survey. Class size, significant concern. Curriculum and teacher pay. It seems teacher pay has fallen a little bit in terms of level of concern. But those that cluster of issues has been consistently at the top in concerns about K-12 education.